Aphrodite got the award, the golden apple, and procured Paris his beautiful wife, who was already married to an obnoxious male chauvinist, who was a king and a serious business rival to her new husband. For the Achaeans and Trojans had long waged old war for the control of the rich grain trade that passed through the straits from Russia. It was Menelaus's brother Agamemnon, head of the whole vast conglomerate, who led the expedition against Troy. The opening lines of the Iliad show this bully boy insisting that the hero Achilles turn over to him the fair daughter of the priest Chrysis, whom Achilles has won in battle. Agamemnon's claim to the girl is very simple. He is the boss, and he wants her. To the girl's father, who comes to ransom her, he bawls out, "No, I am not going to let her go. She's going to get old and gray in my house, far from her home in the weaving department, and she's going to bed with me whenever I feel like it. Now you get out of here. Don't bug me, if you want to leave in one piece." That is the kind of a great leader Agamemnon is. Note here that Greek women were treated like captives because originally they were captives. When the warrior hordes overran the ancient people of the coast, they subjected their matriarchal society to perpetual suppression, though from time to time the smoldering fires broke out fiercely. It is not surprising that Agamemnon, to expedite his journey to Troy, sacrifices his young daughter Iphigenia to Poseidon. But this gave a moral pretext to his wife Clytemnestra, as ambitious and unscrupulous as he, to connive with her lover in murdering her husband on the day of his return, for which the son, Orestes, murdered his mother and the king who ruled by her sufferance. While the avenging Furies pursued Orestes, the gods took a vote to decide whether his avenging of his father justified the killing of his mother. Not surprisingly, the vote split on party lines, every god voting to acquit the defendant and every goddess voting to convict him, another showdown between male and female. The tie was broken by the vote of Athena, invented for the express purpose, it is believed, of tipping the scales for the patriarchy. She also holds the balance between imperious Zeus and relentless Hera in their ceaseless feuding at the expense of poor Odysseus and Penelope. Zeus and Hera bickered constantly. Vexed by his infidelities, she often humiliated him by her scheming ways. He never fully trusted Hera. She therefore resorted to ruthless intrigue. In Egypt, Israel lived under a matriarchal monarchy from which they were delivered under Moses. Moses' romantic career parallels that of Abraham to a remarkable degree. The tension between matriarchy and patriarchy begins with the Hebrew midwives refusing Pharaoh's command to put to death all the male babies, an order which the Egyptians carry out with a will. Moses is rescued by his mother, placed in a reed float, and rescued and brought up in the rushes of the Delta swamp by two women, a nurse and a princess mother, exactly like the infant Horus, protected and raised by Isis and Nephthys in the same swamp of Chemis. Then Moses marries one of 7 water-drawing maidens, who declares her independence, and to whose father, not his own father, but his wife's, the hero always defers. He balks at assuming the role of the Pharaoh he has overcome in the sea, and indeed it was not he but Miriam who celebrated the victory over the waters and the rival king. When he turns Nile water into blood, he is performing an age-old rite reserved to the women of Egypt, celebrating the founding of the nation by a woman who discovered the land. He leads the people to a place of 12 wells and 70 palms, the symbolic number reminding us that Sarah figures as a palm tree in Abraham's dream in the Genesis Apocryphon, as Nausicaa does in Odysseus's fantasy. When the tables are turned against the Egyptians, it is their male firstborn who perish, another blow at male succession. Surprisingly, it is not Moses, but his wife Zipporah, who circumcises their firstborn son and proceeds to rebuke her husband with stinging contempt. Plainly, the attempt at patriarchal assertion met tough resistance. The people rejected Moses as their leader, even after he had saved them, and plunged with a will into the licentious matriarchal rites led by the wives and daughters and their sons under their influence, there is no mention of husbands or brothers, who contributed their gold earrings to make the golden calf. That was bowl of his mother, who represented to the Egyptians the youthful Pharaoh's submission to his mother. While they were singing and dancing in the best matriarchal tradition, Moses ordered the death of every male participating in the rites. They were to slay every man his brother, if he caught him at the party. This third liquidation of males was followed by a solemn rededication to the patriarchal order. Consecrate yourselves, even every man upon his son, and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. This apostasy had been one of the fastest yet. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them, said the Lord to Moses. My people have sold themselves for gold and silver. That, along with total depravity, completes the picture and brings the world order back to normal. After Moses, the romantic David had his women trouble, as we all know. Like Aaron, he danced in the manner of Pharaoh before the altar, and the queen, looking on, despised him in her heart. What need be said of Solomon and the ladies? That super-macho male chauvinist met his match in the Shulamite woman, who outwitted the all-wise Solomon and thoroughly humiliated him. A whole epic cycle revolves around Solomon's Benedict and Beatrice, Petruchio and Catherine game with the Queen of Sheba, who, as Bilquis, the name designates her as a ritual hierodual, matches wits with him for throne and empire, in which he cheats shamelessly, but is beaten just the same. Years ago, I collected some 100 versions of the story, beginning with the account of how Judah took advantage of the helpless Tamar, who turned his sin against him and came out winner. I was struck to find a whole line of ancient queens doing the same sort of thing, and usually going under the same name. Thus, when Cyprus, having conquered all the world but one country, that of the Amazon Massagetes, ignored the wise counsel of his advisor Croesus and invaded that land, its queen trapped him at a banquet where she cut off his head and sloshed it around in a bag of blood. I do not talk about such things for their sensationalism, but for their extreme frequency in myth and history. They form a regular pattern, a constant groundwork for history. In the long line of tragicomic, I can't live with you and I can't live without you, confrontations, man and woman stage an endless tournament of dirty events with survival as the prize, in all of which there is something very wrong, however much we have come to relish it in novels and TV programs. Can this be the purpose of the marvelous providence that brings men and women together? If we must all live together in the eternities, it can never be in such a spirit. And so we find the celestial order of marriage resorted to again in the meridian of time. From the earliest writings, both defending and attacking Christianity, it is clear that the relationship between the sexes was something very special with them. Outsiders were shocked and scandalized, for example, by the promiscuity implied in the Christian practice of calling each other brother and sister. A more than ordinary emphasis on family life is apparent in the warnings of 1 Clement to the leaders of the church, that they are neglecting to pay sufficient attention to their own families and the bringing up of their children in the church. The more recent discoveries of early Christian documents allow us insights into the nature of the teaching that incurred the wrathful criticism of an immoral age that did not understand it at all. Thus we learn in the Gospel of Philip and the Apocalypse of Adam how Adam and Eve were united in celestial union before the creation of the world, but upon descending to the earth became separated, with death entering into the scene. Christ came to earth, says the Gospel of Philip, for the express purpose of bringing them together in eternal life. Thanks to him, those who are united in the bridal chamber will never more be separated. The ordinances here are symbolic, but the images are important models to be followed. Let us recall how often the Lord refers to himself as the bridegroom. The symbols we have here are indeed meager compared with the perfect glory. The things we do in symbols merely hint at things as they are, for there is glory above glory and power upon power, the Holy of Holies and the bridal chamber. These are the ultimate. Though sin still enslaves us, when the truth is revealed, the perfect life will flow for everyone, that those who were separated may be united and fulfilled. All who enter the bridal chamber may beget in the light, not after the manner of nocturnal mating. Whoever becomes a son of the bridal chamber will receive the light, and when he goes out of the world, he shall already have received the true instruction through types and images. That early Christian ideas of marriage were far from the conventional ones is plain enough from the difficult solution to the problem arrived at in the 4th century, when the ceremonies of the church were widely accommodated to those of the world. Was the church conquering the world, asks the great Catholic historian Duchesne, or was not the world rather conquering the church? The solution was to accommodate a difficult concept of marriage with the practices of the world, and to accept that ancient and established cop-out, celibacy. In the Christian literature of the early centuries, when Christianity was splitting up into many sects, each claiming to possess alone the gnosis, the secret teaching of the Lord to the apostles after his resurrection, one reads much of the tribulations of Sophia, who is equated with Eve. Once long ago, she tried to become perfectly independent and go it alone. She was wisdom, as her name signifies, who is almost a person in the Scriptures, but not quite. If the woman is life, she is also wisdom. Well, Sophia thought that she, as the mother of all, could not only produce but govern the universe all by herself. The result was a ghastly abortion. Chastened and terrified, she was rescued by Jesus Christ, the bridegroom, who reached out his hand to her and took her back again. For he needed her too. And only when the two worked together in perfect accord could God's purpose go forward in the universe. Jesus was born when Caesar Augustus was inaugurating the long line of emperors, while his wife Livia was initiating the long and faithful line of imperial wives and mistresses. She poisoned right and left to get her son Tiberius on the throne, not because she loved him, but because that was the way of preserving and increasing her own power and wealth. Nobody knew better than the Romans that when the treasury was empty, the emperor was finished. Most of the Roman emperors were murdered by their successors, who in turn were murdered by their successors. Rome's one original contribution to letters was a brilliant and perceptive line of satirists telling us all about life in the Roman world. The theme, of course, was money and sex. From the confused jumble of traditions and beliefs of late antiquity, the heritage of very ancient times indeed, there emerged at the beginning of the Middle Ages such mysteries as the Round Table, in which we find rejuvenated the romantic ideal of the hero, who is never ambitious for himself, and the lady pure and holy whom he serves. A more dramatic contrast to the reality of the times, as we see in the 10 books of Gregory of Tours' Frankish history, would be hard to imagine. What put a quietus to the Round Table was partly the stress and tension of perpetual dalliance under the code of chivalry. If Lynette snobbishly humiliated her knight, so Galahad prudishly denied his favors to the ladies, but mostly the failure was brought on by the jealousy and ambition, personified by the sinister Mordred, that poisoned the minds of true lovers. Shakespeare has given us a classic study in sex and power in Macbeth. There is a beautiful relationship between the Lord and his lady until they both start reaching for power. The moral of the play is that the lust for power and gain inevitably destroys the true and proper nature of the sexes. It begins with the archaic matriarchy, dark Chthonian Hecate, no less, who sets 3 women, the witches, to trap and destroy the hero. But they are unnatural women. "You should be women," says the hero's companion when he sees them. But what can these bearded creatures be? Full of confidence, the hero brushes them aside, and yet he is fascinated by them. "Speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors or your hate." Proudly independent, he has already taken the bait and is in the trap. Their prophecies get him all excited, and he writes to his wife, who reads his letter and sees right off that in order to promote themselves, she and her husband will have to forget all about their natural roles as man and woman. "Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full the milk of human kindness." For Macbeth was a kind man to begin with. The spark of his former self flashes through from time to time during the play. And the lady was known as a sweet and gentle woman. But now she must get down to business. "Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valor of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. It is the crown they are after. Why settle for less? In view of such a prospect, all their former values are violently wrenched in a new direction as a messenger comes in and tells the lady that they are about to have a royal guest. The king is already in power. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. She must be unsexed to follow her ambition. Come to my woman's breasts, and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. Already milk again. That is the human side of them. Both of them share the milk of human kindness, but they must get rid of it to get ahead. Next, flinching from the murder, Macbeth shows his old human self when he is stopped short by the thought of pity like a naked newborn babe. But Lady Macbeth pushes him on by telling him to become a man. He doesn't like that. A man is one thing, a monster is another. I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none. You are wrong, she says. I am trying to make a man of you now. That means going all the way. When durst do it, then you were a man, and to be more would be so much more the man. Then she gets back to milk again, and says a terrible thing. I have given suck, and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this. Unsexed as a woman, unnatural as a mother, if that's what it takes to get what she wants. And what does she want? Power. She wins the argument. Bring forth men-children only, for thy undaunted metal should compose nothing but males. She is too good to be a woman. Women are weak. But Lady Macbeth has her moment of weakness. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. The next words she cries out are, my husband. Later she takes him to task. My hands are of your color, but I shame to wear a heart so white. Macduff tells Lady Macbeth he cannot tell her what has happened. O gentle lady, the repetition in a woman's ear would murder as it fell. It should, but she is no longer a woman. In fact, someone describes the stormy night as unnatural, so the old matriarchs give Macbeth the crown, but the whole thing is wrong. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren scepter in my grip. The words are significant. This sort of success is fruitless and barren. Macbeth does have a conscience. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. He does not want to involve her in any more murders. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, an almost comical betrayal of how he wanted to think of her still. But at the banquet she is at him again. Are you a man? Proper stuff. These flaws and starts would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authorized by her grandam, shame itself. What quite unmanned in folly, fie for shame. The ultimate humiliation is now that he should be like a woman, a silly, superstitious woman, a feeble, helpless old woman. To the ghost he says, what man dare? I dare. Protest me the baby of the girl. This is as low as self-contempt can get. Why so, being gone, I am a man again. In his rage and frustration, he orders the extermination of Macduff's family, his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. He has no children, is Macduff's reaction when he hears the news. Lady Macduff says when the murderer approaches, I remember now I am in this world, where to do harm is often laudable, to do good sometime accounted dangerous folly, another perversion of values. Why then, alas, do I put up that womanly defense? The young and sensitive Malcolm has had more than he can take, and raves, Nay, had I power, I should pour the sweet milk of concord into hell, uproar the universal peace, confound all unity on earth. At this point, Shakespeare introduces an important but often neglected interlude. To check his raving, Macduff replies to Malcolm that his father and mother were a most sainted royal pair. Malcolm then says, I am yet unknown to woman, never was forsworn, scarcely have coveted what was my own. Neither sex nor greed had spoiled him. The doctor then introduces talk of Edward the Confessor, the reigning king of England. At his touch, such sanctity hath heaven given his hand. Those with maladies presently amend. Malcolm follows with this observation: a most miraculous work in this good king, to the succeeding royalty he leaves the healing benediction. With this strange virtue he hath the heavenly gift of prophecy, and sundry blessings hang about his throne that speak him full of grace. This scene sets forth the conditions upon which power may be enjoyed without satanic corruption, only by those who are totally unworldly. For one in a position of power, the only alternative to becoming devilish in this world is to be holy. In the same scene, when Macduff learns the news, Malcolm says, "Dispute it like a man." Macduff replies, "I shall do so, but must also feel it as a man." For the Macbeths, on the other hand, to be a man was to have no feelings. What does the lady care about such things? Fie, my lord, a soldier and afeard. What need we fear who knows it, when none can our power to account? Get enough power, and you can forget about things like feelings and conscience. What can anybody do to you? As it turns out, Macbeth's undoing is his contempt of women. The witches, lying like truth, have told him to do whatever he pleases, since none of woman born can harm Macbeth. What's humanity to him? And he keeps harping on that. No mere woman's sons can get the best of him. What's the boy Malcolm? Was he not born of woman? What's he that was not born of woman? Such a one am I to fear or none. But swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man that's of a woman born. So everything collapses when it is plain that the sisters have played him a rare trick. Accursed be the tongue that tells me so, for it hath cowed my better part of man. In the last scene, the new king calls for punishing the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen. A woman unsexed as she was can no longer be called human. With the rise of commercialism at the end of the Middle Ages came a feeling of liberation, a romantic release for love, and a free field for acquisition. The relationship of the sexes became both romantic and calculating. From Shakespeare's and Molière's comedies down to Agatha Christie, there is nothing wrong with the beloved's expectations of $10,000 a year. Gilbert and Sullivan got away with exposing the deep and pious Victorian situation by making great fun of its absurdity. "I'd laugh my pride to scorn in union holy," says the fair maid, perfectly willing to forget rank and wealth and marry a poor sailor for love alone, on one condition: were he more highly born, or I more lowly. For inevitably it was not true love that triumphed, as sentimental audiences made themselves think, but the 10,000 a year. Actually, the situation had not changed for thousands of years. The standard plot of modern comedy was that of the new comedy, that which Plautus and Terence got from Menander, where the obstacle to true love is overcome not by sacrifice, but by the manipulation of a clever servant who gulls a rich old man or woman, or, even more delightfully, by the discovery of a token that proves after many years that the poor youth or maiden was nobly born after all and is the heir to a handsome fortune. So now they can get married because they are both rich. And so we come down to the present-day sitcom, where we can laugh freely at everything but the money, and the heavy primetime show, Crime, of course, with single-minded dedication to really big money, heavily spiced with the super status symbol, plenty of expensive sex. One of my daughters has a little book with these words on the cover: The College Survival Kit. 51 proven strategies for success in today's competitive college world. Survive and succeed. Don't take chances with your college career. Survival, success, competitive, career. The dictionary defines strategy as deception practiced on an enemy. The word is well chosen. No deception is too shameful to use against an enemy. And whatever the game, your competitor, even the reluctant customer, is the enemy. What a seedbed of mischief this is. The result of this philosophy in terms of human values has recently been the subject of numerous studies. One of the pioneer studies was S. White's Organization Man, which told us how the company man would never think of wooing or marrying anyone not approved of by his superiors. So much for true love. A recent summary of many of these investigations is Michael Maccabee's The Gamesman. The section called The Head and the Heart is relevant to our discussion. A corporate president remarked that if he thought of one word to describe his experience with managers over a period of 35 years, that word would be fear. There is the cloven hoof again. Why are corporate managers fearful? Mr. Maccabee asks, and he discovers that if the corporate individual could penetrate to the causes of this paralyzing fear and anxiety, he would find careerism. Can we improve on Satan's formula as a definition for that? Careerism is the determination to reign in hell rather than serve in heaven. From the moment a person starts treating his life as a career, worry is his constant companion. Careerism results not only in constant anxiety, but also in an underdeveloped heart. The careerist constantly betrays himself, since he must ignore idealistic, compassionate, and courageous impulses that might jeopardize his career. Perfect love casts out all fear, said the Lord, but who wants that if it jeopardizes one's career? Satan's promise to split Adam and Eve was accomplished when God declared, "My people have sold themselves for gold and silver." The few scattered case studies introduced here are merely straws, but they show where the fatal wind is ever blowing. Thinking back, what was Satan's express purpose in inaugurating a rule of blood and horror, power and gain on this earth? It was to breach that wall of enmity that protected the seed of the woman from his direct attack. Only the covenants of Adam and Abraham and the Church of God can overcome it. Though nothing is to be gained by men and women in fighting for the whip handle, that disgraceful tussle will continue until God cuts it short in righteousness. So one must choose between patriarchy and matriarchy until the Zion of God is truly established upon the earth. It is that old devil's dilemma, in which we are asked to take sides with Gog or Magog as his means of decoying us away from our true dedication to that celestial order established in the beginning.
This is the end of this recording. Thank you for being with us. For additional information on this and other FARMS publications, call FARMS at 1-800-327-6715, 1-800-FARMS-15. You can also reach our website at farmsresearch.com or visit your local LDS bookstore.